advisors with solutions to help advisors grow, differentiate, and create efficiencies in their businesses.
Hello and welcome to the inaugural podcast with Practically Speaking. Now, here's the deal. We have the opportunity to get to know every single solitary person on the Practically Speaking and the Practice Management Solutions team here at SEI. Today, we're going to be interviewing the Managing Director and Head of Practice Management Solutions, John Anderson. John and his team have been doing this for a long time, but we're going to kind of lift up the hood and check it out, look at the engine, and really see what they're offering and why it's so important for you to subscribe to the podcast. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Tell us a little bit about your personal history when it comes to financial services. How did you get into this game?
I got started back in, 1984. I summer intern for a company that was in the financial services business. It was interesting, though. I started off as a computer programmer. I had 3 or 4 languages in college. I thought that's what I wanted to do. So I got this job as an intern programming of all things in programming in BASIC, which I don't even think is around anymore, on a mainframe. And what I realized very, very quickly is this is nothing that I want to do. I sat in a room. It was dark. It was I never saw the sun. We sat there and we did these programs, and I realized that I needed a lot more interaction. I needed a lot more contact with people. So coming back the following year, I took a job that with the same company, but I was in the investor relations area. So started off by answering the phone calls, by helping to write letters and to get questions from both financial advisors and from their clients. What's going on? What's the valuation? What does it look like? What are the prospects of this particular investment, and so on? And I really kind of fell in love with it. From there, I moved into the sales area, and 33, 34 years later, I'm still doing it, and I still love it.
You have created this Practically Speaking blog, which is wildly successful, and you are also the head of the Practice Management Solutions division. Tell us a little bit about both of those and where those came from.
Sure. Practically Speaking, I think, is the best way to kind of describe. So my career at SEI, I started at SEI 23 years ago. I was a regional director covering a very large territory in the Midwest, kind of a traditional wholesaling type role where you're getting on the plane, you're talking about financial products, but at the same time, we were talking about custody, we were talking about practice management, we're talking about ideas to help the advisor grow and differentiate. From that sales job, I moved into a management job, a couple different territories, Southeast to the South and then the Midwest, and it really kind of evolved. This whole practice management idea kind of evolved, and I think probably the idea of the blog happened in about 2008. If you remember 2008, we're all kind of scrambling. We're fighting the good fight. We're talking about the long-term value of the markets. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about things changed coming out of the recession. It's going to look good. And what I found at the end of 2008 and beginning of 2009, I started sending out a weekly and sometimes bi-weekly note to all the advisors in our region, mainly a lot of the larger firms. But I sent out a weekly note, and that weekly note typically had a format. It would say, here's an article that I saw that may be helpful in your discussions with your client. Could have been a link to the Wall Street Journal, could have been a link to the New York Times, it could have been a link to a financial planning magazine or something to that effect. And what it always was some way of looking at the future and to say, this it's going to get better. I also included some commentary and some ideas of other places that I saw. And I tried to be as unbiased as possible. I tried to provide them with hope. But I got to tell you, at the end of the day, we were thinking about the hope that when we get through this, the clients and the advisors that we work with together, we're going to come out on the other end and we're going to have stayed the course. We wouldn't have panicked. We would have had that long-term financial portfolio still intact as it was growing. And I loved the concept. I loved the feedback that I got, but I also loved putting those things together. Those things were a kind of a light for a lot of the advisors to say, somebody's in this with me. And that's really kind of what I tried to do. So about 2010, I guess it was, we looked at the SEI Advisor Network at the time, and we looked at, we had a head of the trust company, we had a head of our investment solutions, but we never really had any focus or a head of practice management. What we decided is that for the most part, I could sit in an advisor's office and years of experience, tell them, here's what I see with other practices. I could share with them ideas and techniques. However, it wasn't as consistent if somebody who maybe didn't have as much experience as myself or one of the other managing directors, that they didn't have the experience to be able to share some of those ideas. So we wanted to kind of institutionalize practice management. We started, I was asked to take this role, and the role to me has really kind of evolved. I don't consider myself a creator of a lot of content, but a curator of a lot of content. I go around, we meet with about 7,500 advisors in the advisor network. I meet with a lot of those advisors, whether it's at a conference or whether it's individually or whether it's on the phone, and I kind of curate those best ideas. We started the practice management blog as a way to share those ideas, to help advisors grow, to help them differentiate, to help them create efficiencies. But we're also focused on really doing some of our own research, but really kind of having that voice out there. Here's some good ideas. Here's some tips. Here's some things that you can use for those advisors.
Why is practice management so vital for the 7,500 advisors in your network? What are you hearing from them after they implement your ideas or this curated material? What sort of feedback do you get from the advisor specifically?
Well, the feedback's been great, obviously. If I think about the average advisor, the average independent advisor's in his or her office, and they're doing a great job. They're working with their clients. They're developing the plans. They're monitoring the investments. They're helping to they're growing their businesses. At the same time, I heard from one advisor that we met with not too long ago. And he said, "Listen, how many other advisory offices have I been in? Zero." So when you're dealing in this insular world of working in your practice with your clients, it's hard to take your head, look around, and say, "What is everybody else doing?" So we provide that insight. We provide the opportunity to say, here's what's going on in the business. Now, we look at it in a couple of different ways. Practice management can be tactical, step-by-step instructional. Hey, here's something that an advisor is doing that is unique, that you can replicate. The other side of practice management for us is more thought leadership, where we take a look at the industry, where we look at research, where whether we do our research ourselves or whether we acquire research, and really kind of take a 5-year window or a 10-year window, a lookout to see here's what's going to happen and here's the ways to get in front of some of those changes. So the advisors that we talk to typically love the idea that someone is looking at the future for them and with them, and someone's giving them an idea that they can implement that's going to change the behavior of a client or help their practice a little bit.
Do you offer in your department specifically continuing education credits for advisors also?
There are opportunities. And frankly, it's very rare. I've had numerous discussions with the regulatory boards, and quite frankly, they don't really spend a lot of time or energy talking about practice management. In fact, it's very hard to get CE credit when you're talking about running a better business. I find that a little bit challenging personally. I think about the advisor who wants to be around, who wants to be that financial advisor for that client for the long run. And if they're not running a successful business, if they're not thinking about the future of their business, they may not be around for that client. However, again, most of the regulatory boards don't allow CE. So we have created presentations and papers that take that angle and try and get CE. But I'd say probably 1 out of every 5 that we do actually gets the CE.
Gotcha. Now, as a curator and as the managing director and head of Practice Management Solutions, you have a robust team. Would you mind sharing with the listeners who's on your team and what they do?
Sure. So, I think the best way to look at it is when you look at our Practically Speaking. I write at the end of every week. And we have a contributor that comes usually on Tuesday or Wednesday. So in our contributors page, you'll see people like Heather Wilson. Heather Wilson is in charge of our social media. She is a phenomenal coordinator of all of the different writers, all of the different messaging, whether we're talking LinkedIn, whether we're talking Facebook, whether we're talking blog page or Twitter. She's the one that everybody is going to make sure that it's published, to make sure that it's accurate, that she's working with our legal department to make sure we're okay with compliance. So Heather also writes on social media ideas. I love when Heather puts pieces out there, because what I find is that a lot of advisors, frankly, are very unsure of how to interact with social media. A lot of them are very unsure about the content. And she does a great job of talking mainly about listening as a start, but then focusing on how to do the action afterwards. So Heather is our social media expert. We recently installed Brian Briggs to focus on our millennial point of view. We had a great success with Missy Polig, who was the initial contributor on the millennial point of view. And Missy was a up-and-coming young person taking her CFP who was working in the business, and she called herself a workflow geek, and she called her, she went to a number of different planning sessions, and she really kind of built this little following, which was really phenomenal for her. Missy followed her passion, follows her dream, and after she received her CFP, has actually started at a financial advisor's office and is a junior financial advisor going to be building a book down the road. Brian stepped up. Brian's going to be a little older on the millennial side, but he's still a millennial, and he's focused on helping to give that voice to that next generation. In fact, he and I sat in a meeting the other day, and he's already challenging one of the posts that I wrote about finding that successor, finding that what I call that 40-year-old successor, just like the unicorn doesn't exist. And he said, I've got a completely different point of view, John, and I want to write about it. So Brian, on our millennial point of view, is going to add a lot of value and a really cool take on some of the things that I guess maybe I perceive as kind of a status quo, and he's going to challenge that. Rafe Lee is our financial services technology expert. Rafe and I have written probably 14 of the white papers together. So he's my foil, my friend, and for the most part, we tend to agree on a lot of things, but I love when we don't, because that usually means the paper is even going to be better. But Rafe takes a technology point of view. He's connected with a lot of the different vendors, a lot of different organizations, and really kind of taking a look at what's going on in fintech as it relates to the independent financial advisor. And the last one is Allie Carey. Allie's going to be relatively new to our group. She's probably put together 3 or 4 posts already. But Allie is come into SEI focused on the client experience. Her job is to sit in a number of different meetings and, quite frankly, just ask a simple question. Well, what's the client experience going to look like? Whether the client is an advisor or, more importantly, the end client. How is that client's experience going to benefit? How is that client experience going to look good? How is that client experience going to be what we want that client to have? So she's been writing now and is joining the group, and it's going to be, I think, a really nice, diverse group of people, whether it's more simple strategic practice management ideas or millennials or client experience or fintech or social media. I think you'll find it very interesting with all the different contributors.
How do you communicate the big picture practice management philosophy, the philosophical underpinnings that you all have, because you've been doing this for so long? I know that's kind of a deep question, but what do you think?
Matt, I think it starts with one of the first papers we wrote. It was called Advisor as Business Owner. We sent out a survey to advisors around the country, and frankly, we asked one question. Are you a financial advisor that owns a practice? Or are you a business owner that happens to be a financial advisor? Our whole philosophy was to say, for those advisors who want to have a lifetime practice, who want to treat their clients, have them be clients forever, if we're not thinking like running a business, we're doing ourselves a disservice and we're doing our clients a disservice. We're doing our clients a disservice because they don't want change. They don't want a challenge. They want to be able to hire their last advisor and be done with it. And if we're not thinking like running a business, 2008, 2009 comes around, we might not have a business. I think about the advisors that are out there who have put their blood, sweat, and tears into building this business, who have great client relationships, are doing the right thing on behalf of their clients. When it comes time for them to monetize, to sell, to transition, whatever you want to say, if they're not thinking like a business, that multiple may be greatly reduced. So I think our overall philosophy is it's a business first, it's a practice second. I think our overall philosophy is to say, what is the best and highest use of your time? Is it spending time in front of a computer, or is it spending time in front of your client? I would argue that it's being in front of that client as much as possible. What we believe, frankly, is ultimately the highest and best use of your time is being in front of the client, not in front of the computer. And if you can focus on the client relationship and the client management and focus on doing what's best for the client, instead of being in front of the computer trying to figure out, an asset allocation or one manager versus the other, that's what's going to be a better relationship. That's what's going to help your business down the road.
We're going to switch gears, John, and find out a little bit more about what makes you tick as a human being. Now, these are kind of rapid fire questions, and I don't know is an appropriate answer. I just want to tell you that right ahead of time. But when you're not working, what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? We have a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old boys, so we are running around with them on a regular basis. You know what? Frankly, we've had the best summer this year. What we've really gotten into as a family is different types of music. Both my boys are musicians. They're playing in different little bands right now, and it's kind of fun to watch them. But we've spent this summer going back and forth between what they like in music and what their tastes are and the current bands and what we grew up with, my wife and I. So, for example, we're going to go to Fall Out Boy with my oldest son, but then we followed up with ELO as a family.
Wow.
So we're kind of going back and forth between different genres and different generations, and that's really been a lot of fun this summer to spend with him.
Fall Out Boy to ELO. Wow, that's awesome. That's fantastic. All right, who's your hero?
It's my hero. So I want to say that I grew up in a small town in Illinois, 1,100 people. My hero was my grandfather. Actually, both my grandfathers are my heroes, but in my little town, my grandfather was the one that grew up in a very, very poor, and a farmer, and one of 7, 8 kids. He picked himself up. He put himself through school, through college, put himself through law school. He started this little law practice. My dad joined the law practice, and it was somebody who you just absolutely looked up to your whole life. Is that my grandfather was an incredibly special man, and every time I think about him, I just start to smile.
If you had all of the money in the world that you ever needed, what would you do?
I think about that, and I talk about that with my kids, and I say, we see the lotto, right? The lotto is like $250 million right now, and they say, what would you do? And what if you won the lottery? And I kind of look at them once in a while and I say, guys, we won the lottery. We're happy, we're healthy, and this sounds corny, right? We're happy, we're healthy, I'm doing the job I want to do. Your mom's doing the job she wants to do. You guys are going to great schools. I mean, I think we did win the lottery. I think we do have all the money we need. I don't know. We could always want for more, but it's a good life.
John, that could very well be the best answer to that question I've ever heard, man. I really appreciate that. Who's your favorite person?
I talk about it with them.
Well, you know what? I love that. And I don't think enough people do have that conversation with their children. And it's all really about perspective. And I love asking that philosophical question because it is a lot about perspective. But when you look at history, when you look back at history, who's your favorite person in history and why? So
one of the things when I moved to Philadelphia about 16 years ago, I realized that there was this whole thing called the American Revolution that happened kind of right here. I don't know if you've heard of it, but and since that time, I have been just devouring all sorts of different books about that time, and whether it's different authors or different figures, and I keep going back to probably my favorite of all those books, and my favorite time in that revolutionary time was Hamilton. Hamilton was a guy who was kind of not looked on as he was an immigrant, right? So they didn't really treat him very well. And I remember reading in the book that he was the aide-de-camp to Washington during the Revolutionary War, but in his spare time at night, he created the entire U.S. federal banking system. This is a guy that, before he was 30, had done so much, and yet he still wasn't very well respected by a lot of his peers. He was kind of an interesting character. So I think when I look back, I read a lot about Teddy Roosevelt. I read a lot about Hamilton. I'm currently reading about Ulysses Grant. So there's so many great people that are out there.
What is the one thing you recommend most to clients, family, or friends? This could be a go-to book, a video, a saying, a song, an artist. What do you got?
Oh, man. I'm a pretty good recommender. Whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a meal I had, whether it's a book, whether it's honestly, I try to figure out what the person's interested in before I make the recommendations. So I'm not just going to walk in and say, I read this because you should read it, or I saw this movie because you should see it. I typically spend a little bit more time trying to figure out, what are they interested in, and then see if I can offer any value. There's a lot of discussions, again, around music, around food. I love food, around a good bottle of wine. So I can't say there's my one go-to recommendation.
One thing that most people don't know about you.
I got a quirky one. So when eBay first started, 10, 15, 20 years ago, whenever it was, my brother would send me these notes saying, hey, I just bought this on eBay or this on eBay. And I was like, it's like nothing more than an online garage sale. Why would you do that? And he found some quirky stuff, and we started kind of goofing off one day. So we typed in parentheses to get the quote. So it'd be to John, signed photo. And all of a sudden, we were coming up with hundreds of celebrity photos from B-list, D-list, C-list celebrities. And they were all 8x10, to John, best wishes. And we started a contest to see who could have the quirkiest pictures on their wall. So in my basement right now, one of the few things my wife's let me keep after we got married was I have this incredible collection of D-list celebrity photos, all saying to John, best wishes, so-and-so. I think that's probably the one thing that most people would find pretty weird, but pretty funny.
That's fantastic. When you are facing any sort of struggles in life, do you have a mantra or a motto or something that's a go-to for you to hit that hard reset button and get yourself focused again?
No, I don't. I mean, I think I handle stress very well. I travel a lot. There's always stress with travel. I sometimes can be under a lot of deadlines here. I tend to do it pretty well. I don't necessarily really, I don't think that I let stress bother me too much. If I really need to do something, if I really need to get out of the stress, probably the last 10 years or so, I have been a runner. So I run, 10Ks, I run 10-mile runs, I do half marathons. So I will tell you that I do try to work out almost every day, and I think that kind of helps you because as you're running, you can kind of work out the problems because I certainly don't want to think about one foot in front of the other. But I tend to think things through when I run. I tend to think things through when I'm sitting on an airplane. I tend to have a notepad near me on a regular basis. So if I've got an idea or a strategy or something, I'll jot it down. I don't think stress, hopefully, doesn't affect me too much.
Yes, you definitely don't want to think about how your body is rebelling against you and you're dying as you're in that, 9-mile in. Yeah. Proudest achievement, John. What is your proudest achievement?
There's a lot of things. I've been very, very blessed. I think that the proudest thing is that I'm happy. There's a great quote John Lennon had when he was young. He said his teacher said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And he said, "Happy." And the teacher said, "You didn't understand the question." And he said, "You didn't understand my answer." I think being happy is it. I love what I do. I love impacting the advisors' lives. I love going out and presenting and sharing ideas and strategies that are going to help them and ultimately going to help their clients. I love this. I've turned into a writer. I never expected to be a writer before. So I'm writing this blog and I get a lot of creativity out on that. The people that I work with, I've been at SEI for 23 years. I can't imagine being anywhere else. I've built a family here. And of course, speaking of family, I'm thrilled with my family, a wife and 2 boys. We have a great time together. And some of my best experiences have been when just the 4 of us are on vacation or just the 4 of us even just having dinner together and enjoying and laughing. And that's what it's all about.
Would you mind sharing with your audience the best way to get in touch with you and your team and some of the things that you offer that they might be able to subscribe to or make sure that they read much like your blog?
Sure. So my email address is easy. I do my best to, I don't get a lot of phone calls. I get a lot of emails. So it's janderson, JANDERSON @SEIC.com. I love emails from advisors. I get my best ideas when I'm having conversations. I get my best ideas when I'm talking to advisors that are going through a problem. I wrote a blog post that came out very recently. I said, if I hear it once, it's interesting. If I hear the same conversation with a second advisor, I start to take note. If I hear it a third time, then I got to write something about it because I figure if 3 people are having this, then there's 100 people that just haven't brought it up yet. So I love that conversation. Practically Speaking is at SEIC.com/Practically Speaking. It's our blog. You can subscribe to it. We publish 2 articles a week, non-product specific ideas to help grow, help differentiate. I always say that. We also there's a LinkedIn page, SEI Advisor Network. There is a Facebook account. There is Twitter. It's at SEI John A. And it's kind of fun. We're starting to evolve into a whole new brand, a whole new identity. And I'd love people to come join us. The Advisor Network, as this insular third-party asset management program that we developed back 25 years ago, is evolving into independent advisor solutions by SEI. As we begin to look at maybe taking away some of that inflexible structure of the traditional TAMP and evolve into a more flexible solution for those independent advisors.
Make sure you subscribe to that blog, and we'll make sure that we put those links in our show notes. John, thanks for letting us get to know you a little bit better today.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it.
So today we interviewed John Anderson, Managing Director and Head of Practice Management Solutions at SEI. If you would like, click that subscribe now button below. That way, every time the practice management team and the Practically Speaking team come out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device, and it also makes it easier for you to share with other advisors all of this great information. So for everybody at the Practice Management Solutions and Practically Speaking, this is Matt Halloran, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.
Thank you for listening to the Practically Speaking podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. Information provided by Independent Advisor Solutions by SEI, a strategic business unit of SEI Investments Company. The information covered and posted represents the current views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Independent Advisor Solutions, SEI. Guests are not affiliated with SEI or its subsidiaries. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.
As of June 30th, 2018, the SEI Advisor Network, now Independent Advisor Solutions by SEI, works with 7,500 advisors.